I always feel like when I'm reading a book or a book series, sometimes I just get really bored and I always end up getting into a reading slump. Now, I don't ever think about a reading slump too deeply. I've only been in one a couple of times. These are kind of some of the books that I used in the past and still use till this day on rereads or anything, just to get me out of that, to enjoy reading again. Because sometimes when I am in these reading slumps, I actually end up not enjoying reading in general anymore. It's a scary thing because clearly behind me, and then I have stuff in my closet and out in my living room, that I have a lot of books I want to read or just have read, and I just have enjoyed them. I have about 5 books that, to me, that helped me out a lot when it came to slump, and I just want to let you guys know which ones helped me a lot, and maybe it'll help you as well. So the first one's kind of broad. It's just gonna be, I guess, a genre. Now that's the first thing, is switching genres always helps. This is completely different than reading, a regular novel, comic books instead. So I usually read manga too. If I'm reading a big heavy book, I usually switch to a manga right after, just so I don't feel, oh man, here we go again, have to switch to another big book. So while I was reading The Wheel of Time, for example, I would switch from The Wheel of Time to read Berserk or Vinland Saga or Vagabond or Dragon Ball, just whatever was helping me so I don't feel slumped anymore. And reading these big epic series, sometimes you just need a palate cleanser or just something to really help you breathe. And I do recommend a lot of people to read manga. And yes, there is some manga that is kind of childish, and that's okay. You don't have to read those ones. There is a lot of adult content of manga that you can read. Of course, I always recommend people to check out manga in general because manga is nice. Like I said, I read it because, for one, I'm a big fan of manga in general, but 2, it is really nice to just grab one volume, read it. Takes you maybe 15, 20, maybe even a half hour to read it, and you feel so much better after. Because sometimes when you're reading these regular books, you get the same fantasy tropes, or you get the same romance tropes, or the same mystery tropes. You get a lot of the same tropes, but when you read manga, the tropes are always going to be a little different. You don't have the farm boy from home like that you do in a lot of fantasy. You have, sometimes the main character does have a tragic beginning, or he's just an idiot, and it changes things up a little bit. That's all I have to say. And it's a really nice thing to try. The other 4 are actual books or book series that I think a lot of people should try to get out of a reading slump. Now, manga is just basically just the genre of what I think a lot of people should definitely check out because, like I said, manga is great. But these 4 I think are just really good, and one of them is easily one of my favorite YA book series, and well, 2 of them are, because I really like both of them. I'm actually rereading, sort of. When I get in a slump, I'll just read one of them and I just get right out of it. And we'll go with the first one. It's the second largest one of the series out of the books I'm picking, but that would be a series on unfortunate events. I'm sure you guys probably seen the movie with Jim Carrey in it, or you've seen the Netflix adaptation. But yes, it did start out with a book series. It's 13 books, and I'm not gonna lie, it is so sweet, cute, innocent, dark, kind of messed up, disturbing. It has all of it. And the best part is while you're reading this, the author, Lemony Snicket, also tells you, yeah, this is a story that you probably should not read because there's no happy ending, at all. Every book, sorry for a spoiler, but he even tells you at the beginning of every single book, bad things are going to happen to the kids. So you're following a story with the 3 Baudelaire children, and it starts off with actually a pretty sad thing. It's called The Bad Beginning because it is sad. You have Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, and bad things happen to the parents. The 3 of them are going to be inherited a fortune, a large fortune, but they have to go to someone's home, a family member, to be taken care of until Violet's of age. And once Violet is 16, then they get the money, and then they can just do whatever they want. And then they go to Count Olaf's. Now, Count Olaf wants, obviously, the money. And, well, you have a series of unfortunate events. And in this series, as you get to see a lot of things that are kind of dark. But yet again, it's also like a feel good. Like every time I read it when I was a kid and I loved it, and then I reread it as an adult a couple years ago, and I actually reread A Bad Beginning earlier this year because my year of reading has not been the greatest, especially with actual books. Manga side has been great, but for actual books just hasn't been. So when I would get in a reading slump, I would just pick up one of them and read it. And this is a great series. I recommend a lot of people checking it out. It's fun. It is sad, like I said, but like I said, to help you really get out of a reading slump, it does help you because the first book's like 160 pages, and they're like this big. They're really small, and it just makes it a lot easier just to, you're like, all right, I can get through this book. The next one is something, actually, it's the first book I read when I was in high school, because as a kid, I would read, but not a lot. Like I said, I read A Series of Unfortunate Events. I read another book called A Taste for Rabbit, which actually isn't that bad, but we're not talking about that book. This is a series that really just hit home for me. Like, I wasn't a big fan of Harry Potter growing up. Sorry. But instead I read Percy Jackson, and holy crap, Percy Jackson is just such a banger. And this is a great book to get you out of a slump. Yes, some of these books, these first two books I'm naming off, are for younger adults, but still, it doesn't matter. You want to escape, you want to feel good or reality or whatever. This is what you want. You want to read something different, get you out of that slump. These are the books for it. Percy Jackson, obviously you start off in the first book with a kid named Percy Jackson, and you learn that he is one of the Greek gods' son, and you actually go through the 5-book series following Percy, and Percy writes it all in first person, which is also kind of interesting. But while you read it, you get to see the world the author wrote, and you get to see how he does all these things with Greek mythology, and you actually learn quite a bit from Greek mythology while you're in this world, because he explains in ways that just seem like fun stuff. And I really enjoy that part that he has done for Greek mythology. I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, so while I'm reading this and I get to see the difference that he's been doing with it and growing as characters, and even the Greek gods are characters, it's really interesting. I do enjoy it. So this is just one single book. It's just a quick palate cleanser, and this book actually was my favorite book of last year. Will I reread it? Probably, especially if I want a quick palate cleanser or I'm just feeling like, hey, none of these books are working for me. Now, this is a darker book. This is kind of sad, but it's a real eye-opener, and it's really popular, so I feel like a lot of people have heard it or have read it, which if you have read it, let me down below. I would really like to hear it. That is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Now, this book is actually about her whole life, of what was going on with her and her mom for a relationship, about her relationship with Nickelodeon, and everything that she had to go through as an actress. And it kind of just blows my mind of just behind the scenes of just how much stuff she actually went through. Because obviously when I was growing up, iCarly was really popular, and I was watching iCarly and she was playing Sam, and she never seemed like someone that was truly broken on the inside, because how she played Sam was just this tough, rugged girl and everything that everyone liked. She would beat people with socks with butter in it. It was really funny stuff. So when you get to read this book, that's one reason why I wanted to read it, because I like Jeanette McCurdy as, like an actress and stuff, because she seems very down to earth, which is why I enjoy reading this. I just grew a lot more respect for her, and I learned a lot more. I read this book in a day, and because it was so good. I'm not lying. This book was amazing. I think a lot of people should definitely check it out, because it does help you with a lot of things that you might be, going through and stuff. It just helps you really think about how everyone's gonna be like what they are on the surface level. So it's just like a deeper meaning book, and I do recommend people checking it out, because it is so good. So the last book is something I haven't read. It was when I first started getting back into fantasy or just reading in general. It was my brother recommended reading. I checked it out, and I didn't realize it was 17 books. And when I started reading it, the first book was just like different. It was just a lot different than what I expected, because I was used to medieval fantasy books. Everything was during in Europe, so I was used to a lot of that. And when I read this book, it was just in Chicago. And growing up as a kid, every morning before I would go to school, my mom would always have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Charm, or Angel was always on. And I would watch it from 7 to 8 while I was waiting for the bus. And I always liked it. And so I decided, this is cool. And that's how my brother, told me about this book. And that is going to be the Dresden Files. Now, the Dresden Files is so fun to read. I mean, a lot of the first couple books, he's slowly getting his footing. Personally, on a reread, I do audiobook for the second reread of them, I see no problem with them. I enjoy them. Even the first time I read them, I actually enjoyed them still. And that's why I had a hard time understanding why people just didn't. But for me, I really did enjoy the series as a whole. I think it's a really fun series. And none of them are high commitments. And you're just following Dresden through, his journals, essentially, because it's all first person, so every book is going to be Dresden's writing and explaining what's going on. And Dresden's a really hard character to dislike. At first, you might dislike him, but he grows on you over time. And even if you don't like Dresden, the cast around Dresden is really good. All the characters that are around Dresden are just fun characters to be around. And everyone is so different in this book. That's what I really like. It's so enjoyable. And there's times where he makes like references of Star Wars or Coke or whatever. You can't help but giggle. He even makes like references with Lord of the Rings. And there was times where he was going to play D&D and he was like, D&D, like it's a fantasy world. And he's like deals with the supernatural in his real life, which is it was just fun to like escape. I've always enjoyed the Dresden Files. And like I said, I'm currently doing the audiobook. I might do like a full review of the whole series, or I might just start bringing out weekly videos of book reviews of each one. Maybe I will in the future. But all in all, the Dresden Files is so good. I would recommend checking it out, especially if you still want fantasy or that supernatural, but you don't want it in medieval times or in Europe or stuff. And this is modern time in Chicago, and it's just different. That's what I really like about it. So I kind of want to get into more urban fantasy eventually, and I'm just still waiting for book 18 to come out because, boy, I'm so excited. If you have made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. Make sure you guys check out all my links down below. Check out my book. It is on Amazon, and so is the second book, if you guys want to. I'm not going to complain. Check out my socials. Follow me on Instagram. Add me on Goodreads. I want to see what you guys are reading. And of course, make sure you guys stay safe, stay hungry, and tell someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.